Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about all of the books that I have read in June. We're going to wrap up my reading month, and this was also the second month of my sabbatical, so I will talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. So if you're not interested in my more like lifestyle stuff, you can just skip out before that happens. I will give you individual book reviews for all of the books that I've read in June, or that I finished in June rather. And then for the beginning of this video, I also like to go into a couple of stats that have to do with my goal of reaching a 0 TBR by the end of the year. So that's what we're gonna start out with. Let's talk about some numbers. As a quick reminder, I started out the year with 37 books on my TBR, and I thought it would be very easy to read that down to 0 this year, but then I also thought it's so easy. Why don't I just go in with no strategy? So things have not been going great so far. We actually started out June with 52 books on the TBR, and it was the first time we gotten over 50, which definitely hurt me somewhere deep inside me. And my big goal was to get under 50 again, and now we're going to talk about whether that actually happened. So in the month of June, I managed to read 10 books, which is the same amount that I read in May. Pages wise, it was even a tiny little bit more, so we are doing okay with the reading. This is also slightly above average for my normal reading when I'm not on a sabbatical, so that's also quite good. So you would think 10 books, my god, she like dropped under 50, no problem. Well, we have two other numbers we have to consider to actually know more about that. And the first one is the number of books that I have bought. And in June, I bought 3 books, which is okay. That's like my usual number because I tend to buy audiobooks because up until a couple of months ago, I didn't have an audiobook backlog, so I'm totally fine with buying new audiobooks. However, where things got a little bit out of hand again is with the number of books that I have borrowed. And in June, I borrowed 6 books, which is a lot. Now, I have to say that some of these were also audiobooks, so with those, I'm a little bit more fine. But I also borrowed ebooks through Libby, so that took up quite a bit of my eyeball reading as well. So if we take this all together, we have 10 books read, 3 books bought, and 6 books borrowed. We end up with -1 book. I reduced my TBR by 1 book in June, which, I mean, at least we reached a minus number, which is like the second month this year that I did that. And that is sad. Like, I only reduced my TBR so far in March, and now by 1 book in June. And that leaves us off with 51 books on my TBR at the end of June. We're still not under 50, but in July, I promise we will get this number down. I have to stop getting books from the library. And right now, my Libby system allows 4 books on hold. And all 4 books I have on hold right now have the longest waitlists. So they're like, I don't know, 20 weeks or something. So they should not come in anytime soon. And I currently have 2 books that I have checked out. So let's hope that in July I will only read those 2 library books and then 8 other books from my actual TBR. That would be amazing. So we'll see whether that works out. But yeah, so far the progress we have made is not great. We still haven't even reached where I was at the beginning of the year. Like, what am I doing, you guys? Okay, now after this very depressing bit, let's get into the actual books I read. I want to give you mini reviews for all of the 10 books I finished in June. And we're going to start right off with one of the ebooks that I have read, and that one was also the first book I read on my vacation, and that was Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is the second Vera Wong book, which is a series of cozy mysteries where we follow an older Chinese woman called Vera Wong, and she, in the first book, kind of gets sucked into a mystery when a dead man shows up in her tea shop. But now, after the first book, she has kind of developed a taste for the crime. So she is actually looking for more cases to solve. And that comes around when she meets a mysterious young girl in front of the police station where she went to see her almost daughter-in-law. And this one again is like very much in the vein of the first book, where we do have a crime that happened, we do have someone who ended up dead, we do have a cast of characters that are potential suspects but also become new friends with Vera, and Vera is just one of those people who like to meddle in other people's lives, and now that she has kind of set up all the characters from the first book, she's kind of looking for new friends that she can meddle with. So yeah, it's very much that. I think the actual case and what is explored in the second book is a little bit even more harrowing than the thing in the first book. However, the tone is still very cozy. So while we know that this is like something very tragic and terrible that is like going on that Vera is trying to uncover, and I think it is quite obvious what it is from like early on in the book, but I don't want to say it. So if you feel unsure about this, definitely look up trigger warnings or content warnings. But yeah, this is a heavy topic, but it is handled in a more like, I don't want to say lighthearted way, that sounds so wrong, but the tone of the book just never gets like super sad and dramatic. There is, however, a chapter that absolutely made me cry on the beach. So yeah, keep that in mind if you want to pick this book up. In the end, I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Now, the next 3 books I'm gonna talk about kind of in tandem because it is a series. I have a series vlog up for this one. This is the Between Earth and Sky series by Rebecca Roanhorse. We have Black Sun, the first book, Fevered Stars, second book, and then Mirrored Heavens, the third book. I read all of these more or less during my vacation. The last book I started on the plane back, and so I read these like very quickly, and it was really fun because I hadn't really done that in a while with a fantasy series where I would just really sit down and just read through the books. So it was a really nice experience. For the books themselves, they were a little bit of a disappointment for me just because I had Black Sun as a 5-star prediction for a very long time, and it didn't quite live up to it. But this is a pre-Columbian inspired fantasy world where we still have a lot of gods. However, there has been kind of a war, and at the end there is like this priesthood with the sun priest as like the highest figure, and they have kind of forbidden the gods. They try to lead a very like rational world, and because of that it has been kind of peaceful, but also the gods are not very satisfied with that and start to kind of meddle. And in this city of Tova, where the sun priest resides, there has been kind of a very like big and terrible attack on one of the families that worship the crow god. And basically because of that, there is a long tail of events that lead up to the crow god being reborn. So in this first book, we kind of see that. We kind of see how the crow god got reborn, and then also we have kind of a journey because the vessel, the person that will eventually hold the crow god, Serapio, has to go to the city of Tova at a specific time to challenge the sun priest. That's basically what this first book is, and we see kind of like everything go down. And then the other 2 books are dealing with the aftermath of that, and I can't really talk a lot about this without spoilers, but basically everything gets bigger and bigger. We have more kind of gods involved, we have more people involved, and it like is kind of like building up to this like big war again, because of what happened at the end of the first book. So overall, this was a fun series. I had a good time with it. I gave all of the books 4 stars for the craft, because I can definitely see that these are just well done fantasy books. However, they weren't quite the fantasy that I enjoy, because my like favorite kind of fantasy is like very character driven, very much like intrigue and cunning characters, and like very complex like relationships and dynamics between the characters. And this one always just stayed a little bit too surface level in that regard for me. This one is definitely much more interested in exploring this world, in exploring the magic and the gods. And that was interesting, but it just never really got me hooked. It never really got me to the point where I couldn't stop reading. And especially the last book just had a lot of stuff in it, like a lot of tropes and character arcs that I just don't enjoy. And so, yeah, it wasn't my favorite series, but it was a good, like, solid fantasy read. Then the next book I finished was also a second book in a fantasy series, and that was Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick. This is the second book in the Rook and Rose trilogy, which I'm also currently reading, and the series reading vlog for that will be coming up in July. So I don't want to talk like a ton about it here. In this one, we have at the beginning of the series a woman called Ren who is a con artist, and she's trying to get into this noble family. She's pretending to be like a long lost heir, and so she wants to kind of steal their riches. Problem is, they're not really that rich anymore, and so Ren gets entangled into the whole like political situation of these noble families in this town where she grew up. There is a lot more going on. We have a character called the Rook, who is kind of a Sorrow character. He is attacking the noble people and trying to bring them to justice. And so we have like a whole like tangle of things. I feel like the first half of the first book is kind of what you expect when you hear the synopsis of this, and then things just go into a completely different direction. So I can't really talk a lot about this second book either, but I think it continues the story like really well from where we left off. I'm just so intrigued by all of these characters and their dynamics. This is the kind of fantasy that I like. It's just very complex. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of like political players. There is a little bit more of a mythological and theological element to this second book, and with that, yeah, I had a great time. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then next, as the last book of my vacation, I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. Not a friendly name for people who have TH problems. So this one I had a good time with. I kind of picked this up on a whim, but I think I'm gonna do a series reading vlog for that, but that is gonna take a while because the waitlists for these books at my library are quite long. However, I had a really good time with the first book. In this one, we follow a woman called Emily Wilde, who is a researcher for fairies. And at the beginning of the book, she is heading out for a research trip to this like very snowy island. It has like very much Iceland feelings to it, and she's going there to study their kind of fairies that people really don't know a lot about, and so far this has not been studied before, so she wants to be the first to kind of discover the fairies there. However, she's not really great with people, so when she gets there she has issues connecting to the people in the village who could tell her like where the fairies are, how to reach them, the local like folk tales about them, and all of the knowledge she needs. So one day her kind of academic rival shows up, and he's like, hey, let's work together, because he is like really good with people, but he doesn't really like the legwork of the research. And so yeah, there's shenanigans, and I had a good time with it. I think it's like really cute. I'm not really buying the romance so much. I feel like this is like a lot of like parts that we haven't really seen. A lot of the kind of relationship of these two characters we haven't seen because they have known each other for a very long time before we start the book, and things happen kind of quickly with that and not always in a way that I could really understand. But I had a great time with the plot of this. I think that the way those fairies and this like snowy landscape were explored was really fun, and yeah, I had a good time. I gave it 4 stars. Next, I finished another audiobook, and this one was an absolute treat, and it was Swordheart by T Kingfisher. This so far is a standalone, but it is set in the broader world of T Kingfisher, where the Clockwork Boys and also the Paladins series is set. So we do have some crossover to those books, but I haven't read those, and I didn't feel like I was missing out a lot because of that. And in Swordheart, we have a woman who is already like in her 30s or so, and she has been married before, but now she's a widow, and she has been caring for the uncle of her dead husband. However, the uncle also passes away, and he leaves everything to her. And he was kind of like a collector of like weird stuff, and his family is not happy about it. And so they're trying to force her to marry the cousin of her husband who has clammy hands. And so our main character is like, no, this is not happening. However, they lock her in her room and she can't get out. She doesn't know how to look for help. And so in the end, she decides it would be better for her to not be alive anymore so that the inheritance will go to her niece and would be out of reach of this terrible family. So in her room there is this old rusty knife, sword, sorry. And she takes it down from the wall and she decides to not be alive anymore. However, when she draws the sword, a spirit appears, and that is a man, a warrior, and he says that he now is helping her because she's the wielder of the sword, and he is kind of like a spirit that is bound to the sword. And so they escape together and they go on a journey to get her inheritance back. And this is a romance in a fantasy setting, so it's mostly about these two characters. However, along the way, like about halfway through the book, they pick up a non-binary monk and a magical creature called a gnoll, and they're traveling with those two, and that was like the best bit about it. Like, these characters are just so cute, like all of them are so cute. And the romance, basically, we have this grumpy warrior who has been like stuck in the sword for hundreds of years, and a woman who, when she is nervous, she starts talking a lot and she starts asking a lot of questions. So their dynamic is just super cute and I loved it. So in the end, I gave this one 4.5 stars. Next up, I finished another audiobook. I decided to go a little bit more in a horror direction because I do like a good horror book in the summer. And so I listened to They Drown Our Daughters by Katrina Monroe. Unfortunately, this book was not my favorite. This one really deals a lot with like mothers and daughters, but what I didn't know is that the daughter in question is a literal child. And I don't really like reading about children, so this book was kind of doomed from the start for me. However, I did make it through quite quickly because it was like a book where you should really read or listen to like bigger chunks at a time because the story is kind of slow moving. And I think if you only have like little snippets of it, it can get like really boring. In this one, we follow 3 women in a family. We have the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter. The mother is getting a divorce from her wife, and so she goes back to her hometown by the sea with her young daughter. And the grandmother has always been like very paranoid about the sea and that her daughter cannot go to the sea and all of that stuff. And it seems like she hasn't really gotten over that, so they immediately have like issues again and are kind of like fighting again. And really, this is about a curse, a family curse, and we learn right at the beginning of the book, like in the like prologue section, why that curse is, like how it came to be. And this is trying to have a little bit of a twist at the end with this curse. However, I felt like it was like very obvious, and just overall if you're afraid of drowning, this might be a little bit scary, but apart from that, I just felt like it tried to build up an atmosphere, and sometimes it worked out, but like all of that stuff about like these women in the family, it just didn't quite work for me, and especially because the grandmother character Judith was so stupid. It made me cringe so much because we hear a lot about her like teenage years when she was growing up and the decisions she made. It bothered me a lot. Like, it bothered me so much. Like, she was basically like a chicken without a head running in circles and wondering why it always went wrong. So yeah, I didn't love it. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't hate it, but yeah, it wasn't what I expected it to be. And then we're going back to the ebooks because I read two more library holds. We have God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This one is a literary mystery book where we have a summer camp in the 70s, and at the beginning of the book, a girl goes missing, and this girl, Barbara, is the daughter of the family who owns the land where the summer camp is situated. They're a very wealthy family, and so a lot of like things get in motion when Barbara goes missing. However, a couple of years prior, the son of this family has also gone missing on like in this area. Basically, he wasn't like in the camp, but it was still the same area. And so while they're starting to look for Barbara, it also opens up the question again, what actually happened to Bear the son? And there had been kind of like a closed case. They had a person they thought was responsible for his disappearance. However, a lot of people like in this town nearby don't believe how the case was solved. So this one definitely has a lot going on. We're following a lot of characters, and at the core of things, this is a book about like rich people, about things that rich people can do and what they can get away with, and also just how fucked up rich people can be. It's a lot about that. It's also about the like poorer people and how they will always be the ones that get the blame in a way. So I liked exploring those themes. I didn't think that this book like did anything that was like incredibly amazing, like never done before. I had seen a lot of like 5-star raving reviews about this book, and I don't really get it, but maybe also because this is not a genre I read like all the time, so maybe it's just like personal taste as well. So in the end, I gave this one 4 stars. I had a good time with it. And then the last book I finished was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This one, funnily enough, had a little bit of the same theme, because in this one we also kind of have like rich families, and then our main character is not rich, but all of these like girls from these families are her friends. And in particular, in this book, we are looking at the friendship of 2 girls. We have our main character, Abby, and we have her best friend, who is, as I said, from a rich family. And the family moves into Abby's town when they're 10. And basically the way they meet is on Abby's 10th birthday, when no one shows up to her party except for this new girl, Gretchen. And from that day onwards, they're best friends for 6 years, and that's when we kind of meet them again, and we see that they have like a friendship circle, and they're living like their best life and all of that. Like, we all know how like teenagers work. But then one night something terrible happens, and from that point onwards, Gretchen is just not the same anymore, and Abby's trying to figure out what is going on, and she doesn't really have any help with that. So yeah, it's basically her way to get her best friend back. And I think this is a really fun book. I definitely think it is one of the like really good Grady Hendrix books. I have read quite a few by now, and I've liked all of them so far, but this one definitely was more like on the upper end for me personally, and that is particularly because of the ending. I think the ending was phenomenal. I actually cried during that ending quite a bit. So yeah, I really liked it. I had a really good time with it. This would be like a 4.25 star book for me, but I gave it 4.5 stars in the end, and I would recommend it if you're interested in it. It is quite an interesting like kind of possession exorcism story. I think it has a lot of like elements that are like very 80s. It kind of reminded me in parts of that movie about this like what's it called? The Iron Claw, that movie. Kind of this like family dynamic. There is something like quite similar in this book as well, which was a little bit surprising, but also like really fun to read about. So in the end, as I said, I really enjoyed it and I would recommend. So these were all the books that I have read in June. So let's hope for July I read the same amount of books, but maybe actually books that are on my physical TBR. That would be amazing. But yeah, before I let you go, if you're interested, I will talk a tiny little bit about my second month of my sabbatical if you're interested. If not, that's totally fine as well. But yeah, June was my second month, so I had suspected that in May it would be kind of like a weird adjustment phase, which it definitely was, but in June this was definitely the time when the actual like relaxation hit me, and that was very much because of my vacation, because right at the beginning of June I went to Mallorca for a couple of days, and that was like the best time. That was literally the best time. I had craved a vacation like that where I would just lie around on the beach and read my books for such a long time. And it is just the type of vacation that I need. That is for some reason in my DNA, that I need this time of like relaxation. I need a beautiful beach. I need the sea. I love like the waves, and just immediately when I got there, I felt like something click into place within me, and like a lot of my anxiety and my like depressive symptoms just like dropping away. And it was just really, it was so healing to be there. So I think I really profited from that. But then also now the last couple of days, when I returned back home, I first of all I was devastated. It was a hard adjustment being back here, but then also I think that now this like feeling is settling into me that this is not like stopping anytime soon. I wake up every morning knowing that it's okay and that I can do whatever I want, and there is nothing I have to do right now. And I think that is like slowly like settling in now. I can definitely see that now my body is starting to accept that. Now, talking about like things that I wanted to focus on in this sabbatical. Now, obviously, not every month I will focus on everything. And this month, I definitely focused a lot on just like relaxation and resting, which is the number one thing I want to do. And I also did like a lot of like day trips while I was on vacation. So I definitely also saw a lot of new things, and traveling is the number one thing that I wanted to get back into, because it's one of my favorite things in life and something I hadn't done for so long. So just taking that trip was the whole like goal that I could mark off on its own. And then also I spent more time with family. So my grandparents came here for a couple of days, so I definitely checked off that as well, like just spending that time with my family. As I said before, my grandparents are not very young anymore, so I definitely want to use that time that we can still do fun stuff and have a good time. So that was great as well. I also did some more baking, because one of my goals was to just bake because I can bake. Because in the last couple of years, the only times I would bake is if there was like an occasion, if I wanted to gift someone anything, or for Christmas when you just do the traditional baking. But I wanted to get back to a point where I could be like, you know what, I think I want to bake a cake today. And I did that, and it was great. The thing that I didn't really do was my like workouts, like exercise. I really did not exercise in all of June. And right now we have a heat wave here, so I've also not been like very motivated to pick it back up after my vacation. So I'm trying now, like I started yesterday again, and tonight I'll hopefully go to Zumba and die because it's going to be so hot today, but we'll see about that. But yeah, that's the one thing that really did not happen. in June. What did happen is I had a Sims phase. Like right after I came back from my vacation, I fell into a Sims hole for a couple of days, though that was really fun as well. Just like being able to say, you know what, I'm just gonna play Sims for 4 days and no one's gonna stop me. That was like really, really fun. And then also I did a rewatch of the first season of the OC, and it's my like only and favorite kind of teen show. I love the OC so much. I know it has like a ton of like problematic stuff. It was the 2000s, you guys. We were all problematic. However, I love the OC. So rewatching that was like a really, really, really good time. And I've started the second season now, so I'm not stopping anytime soon. And it was just great. It was just so great. And yeah, the combination of watching the OC and then also reading that Grady Hendrix book about like teenage friendship and stuff, it definitely brought back some weird memories as well. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And it's just so cool to have the time to just do whatever I want. So in that regard, June has been like the biggest success. I'm very happy with how the month went. Maybe health-wise, which is also one of the reasons I'm doing this. I did have quite a few migraine days in the month, especially like after my grandparents left, because yeah, there were just a lot of like my usual triggers coming together. So it's not been like a cure, like a magical cure. I still get migraines, but I feel like if you don't have to push through it at work, and if you know that after it goes away you can take the time to kind of recover, it's still like easier to get through, I guess. So yeah, that was my June. I would love to hear all about your month of June in the comments down below. So let me know anything you wanna tell me. Also leave a like, I always really appreciate it. And if you haven't read, please subscribe to see more of my fun summer, which I will share with you very soon. Bye!